And all right, so we're unmuted. Hopefully Sarah. Okay, good morning. We're just going to run a quick test. I want to make sure that everybody can hear okay. If you can hear me, could you please type yes in the chat, just to make sure that the sound and everything is working properly. All right, sweet. I'm going to wait just another minute. There might be a couple other people joining us, so I'll hang on tight here just a second. I apologize for the last minute invite, but I'm really glad that you showed up today. If you would like to try video today, please feel free to do that. We'd like to give it a go. I know last year I mentioned several times that someday we'll try and do video, and I feel like we might as well give it a go. I just ask that if you're not speaking, that you mute your microphone. That way it just helps the distraction as far as sound goes. But if you do have a question or you would like to talk and ask something to us, please go ahead and unmute and ask us a question. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just go through some house rules real quick. I just went through a couple. Questions in the chat are very helpful, so if you feel like asking a question in the chat instead of verbalizing your question, that would be great. We do have developers on standby that can help answer those questions for you during this presentation and during our discussion. So it's not just me answering those questions. We have people on deck ready to help. And also, usually these run, the first few minutes will be a presentation, so they run like that. And then the second 20 minutes is Q&A. And the Q&A can be for anything that you have in regards to your own websites. If you've got something that you're trying to work on, or you're interested in updating a component and wondering how to do that, I'm happy to help answer those questions as well. There are some resources available that we tend to go through at the beginning of these. I would like to mention them today too. The Biology Information Technology website is available for you. This is where you can learn a little bit more about the biology IT team. You can go to biology-it.iastate.edu. You also can visit the luggagedocs.info website. This is the website that's dedicated to the platform that most of your sites are built in, and you'll be able to see some case studies on there too that have been updated. So if you haven't been there in a while, it's worth checking it out again. And there's a nice big button on the front for luggage tutorials. So hopefully that makes it just a little bit easier to get to what you need. The showcase will show you different websites that are developed in the platform, and you can sort them by features now, also by which team manages them, and maybe the different categories if you're interested. So for example, you could see department sites, you could see collaborative sites, faculty sites, etc. The digital access website is very important, and we're so excited. We actually have Zaira Jordan here with us this morning. So you have a surprise guest.
Hello.
Zaira is joining us, and thank you, Zaira, for being here. And
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
This is exciting. So she's here to help guide me, really, and guide us through just looking at some beginnings of learning how to edit our documents in Word and PDFs today. So digital access is filled with a lot of great tips, tricks, resources, and information. And if you're interested in meeting with Zaire, I'm sure she would be more than happy to meet with you.
Definitely. So, please do reach out if you want a one-on-one with me. We can go through whatever your needs are in terms of digital accessibility.
Wonderful. Thank you. So today, we're going to focus on making documents accessible. So over the past year or so, we focused a lot on different luggage components and how the development team has made it possible and easy for web editors to make their content accessible online for their website. And so that's been a huge part of what we've been doing. And I think now it's time to start the discussion about what it might take to help improve the documents that you're uploading to the website to make those accessible as well, because that's also part of the requirement and part of the standard. Would you like to talk at all about kind of when upload, as far as documents, like if you're uploading them to the website, yes, it's important, but when somebody is going to test your website for accessibility, can you talk a little bit about how important documents play a role in that testing? And is that part of it, or is that coming along, or?
When you use an automatic testing tool, when you use an automatic testing tool, the tool, what it does most times, I don't like to generalize because they differ from one to the other, but most times those tools just scroll the code in your website. So if you have some sort of an upload, an attachment, some sort of a document that is external to your website, it's not inscribed in your code, then that tool is not going to crawl that document. Therefore, you should take the measures for that document when you at the time that you upload it, and make sure that it's already accessible, be it a Word, a PDF, whatever other attachments, kind of files you attach to your website, you should take care of them. In fact, studies have demonstrated that institutions like Iowa State, which are PhD granting institutions, where they address the more about accessibility is on PDFs. So we have a lot of PDFs that are not accessible.
Yeah. So just because, and there's a couple good points I'd like to talk about there. So just because a testing tool, it may or may not pick up a document, most likely not, it's still important to keep them accessible, because you have students and visitors downloading these documents that need to have them accessible. So you think about, how to apply online and things like that. If there's potentially a document that helps teach students how to apply, that should be accessible.
Yeah. My graduate student, my former graduate student who is blind, came across so many instances in Iowa State where he had to resort to someone having, reading through the document because he was, he needed to go through a PDF as a requirement for submitting something or applying to something, and he couldn't get across it.
Mm-hmm. So thank you. So we just wanted to explain a little bit about that to make sure that folks are aware that documents are important when you're thinking about accessibility. Oh, sorry, jumped to my thank you slide. So to get started, what we have here is a PDF. I think it's just a little sluggish because I'm in Zoom and trying to move my window at the same time. Sorry about that. So this is kind of what it looks like when you test a document for accessibility in Acrobat. So this is essentially a Word document that's been converted to a PDF, and so now you could test that document to make sure that it's accessible. In order to get there, what you'll need to do is, let's just kind of go back to where you might start. You'll need to go to Tools in the upper right, and when you select Tools, you'll have an accessibility drop-down in the list on the right. And when you select the drop-down, there's going to be some options here in order to do a full check for accessibility. You can add tags to your document. You can set alternate text in your document. So these are things that you could do. If we just run a check, there will be a window that pops up and provides you lots of different options. And honestly, for me, this is where it's becoming fairly new to me, and I'm having a lot of questions, right? Because you look at this and it's sort of, there's a lot of things here. What should I check? What should I not check? And so I don't know if you'd like to touch on that at all. That would be great.
Yeah, I myself have I would say a medium expertise on PDFs. But since my approach is that accessibility is not 100% ever, my take on this, or what I do myself, is that I leave the default. So I would go through the full check, and then see what elements are there that I can remediate. And if there are some that I can't, that as much as I want it to be perfect, many times it's not going to be perfect, but at least you're making an effort and you're having your document somewhat being accessible to your user.
Right. So if we run the report, we're going to see that there are different things that show up here on the left. And one of those items is alternate text. So if I drop that down, I selected it because that's familiar to me. I've heard about it in web. I know that we need to have alternate text. And so we can see that one of the figures has failed for alternate text. And we'll see that when we select figure 1 under that drop down, there is a little arrow here. You can drop it down. You'll see figure 1 will be highlighted to tell you which item is missing the alt text, which is really helpful because if you had a lot of images, that would be difficult to do. So now I'm assuming that this figure is selected and that maybe I'd be able to set alt text, but I'm going to try this. So we have a little box that pops up, and you can see that there's image 1 of 1 because there's only one image, but if there were multiple, this is great because you could actually, I assume, work through the document without having to click on the image and add alt text to every single one individually like that. If it is a decorative figure, so there's a checkbox here for that, and that's also fairly new to me. I know that decorative figures are out there, but what is a decorative figure?
Well, sometimes you insert a line or a flower in your website just for the mere fact that you want it to look pretty, and they don't really convey any meaning to the user. So if you have a figure, an image that it's just intended there for aesthetic purposes and doesn't really convey any meaning, that's a decorative figure. And then you don't need to have an alternate text for that. You can do away with having to have some sort of an explanation for something that is just decorative.
Great. So this is a nice way to be able to tell, I mean, you're actually telling the reader, whoever is viewing the document, that this image is a decorative image. So if you just say, oh, I just have decorative images, I know that's what they are, I'm not going to go in and mess with alt text. It's actually better to go in and look at your alt text and actually mark that checkbox, because if you don't mark the checkbox, then someone viewing your document who uses a screen reader is not going to know that that's a decorative image. They're just going to know there's an image they're missing out on.
Right? Yes, definitely.
Okay. So let's pretend that this is not a decorative image, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put document icon or something. I have a couple questions here. One thing that we learned recently in a recent workshop with Sayura was that there should be a period at the end. And can you explain the reason for that period?
I guess depending on the screen reader, again, every assistive technology is different from each other. When we have a number of different screen readers being used on campus and, you know, abroad, to put it somehow. So it's a better rule of thumb to have a period to indicate that the sentence is, you know, it's finished, and the screen readers who do resort to having, you know, to reading through the period, they're going to have that. It's better grammar, just anyway. So
yeah, it is. But it's nice to give a stopping point to the screen reader, and so I think that's a new tip. So all of you out there, when you're editing your sites in the alt text on the websites, it sounds like a good thing to do is to put that period on the end, and that's something that we haven't been promoting yet. So it's a new tip. Is it important when you're making alternate text to make it a sentence, or is it okay, for example, that the DN document's not capitalized and this is not like an official sentence? Is it better to just be succinct and make kind of a comment?
I would rather be succinct. And again, the rule of thumb that I use for, you know, when I talk about this with people is try to convey exactly what you're conveying to your visual user with that image. So think about the message you're giving your visual user, and do the same for your non-visual user. Because they can't see the image, they're going to listen to what the image needs to convey for them.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's very helpful. So this is a quick way that you can fix alt text for your document. I'm going to save and close this, and then go through here again on the right, and I'm going to run another full check, and we'll see that that check mark has been checked. There are some things that did pop up, so I feel like these are items that we could probably get into in another webinar and not today. But this is what we were talking about, where at least getting used to running the check and seeing what it looks like and seeing where to find these errors is going to be, I think, more important at this point, just to be familiar with doing what it is that you know that you can do for now. And then obviously, as you learn more, continue to keep updating those documents. I also wanted to run through briefly how to check for accessibility in Word. So let's do that first, and then we'll get through some resources. So the best place that I found to do this is in Office 365. And in order to get to Office 365, you can log in like to your Outlook online email that you're used to. And in the upper left, you're going to see a drop down of some apps, and you can find where like Word is one of those applications, and you could select. I'll just select one of these for fun right now. But you can create a document and open it. You can create a document in here and save it. But as Sayura and I were talking about before this webinar, it operates, the Office 365 applications operate similar to how Dropbox or Cybox operates, in that the document's going to be saved in the cloud. And so, so you're going to have to, you know, some of you probably already use this and it's synced to your computer, but just something to keep in mind. I'm showing this because it's more universal. I think that most people can have access to Office 365, whereas I know we all have probably different versions, like I found out this morning, on your desktop for Word and PowerPoint and any of the Office applications. So go to the Review tab, and you can see this under the Word Online blue box. Once you select the Review tab, you can see spelling and grammar, word count, and then check accessibility. When you select check accessibility, you're going to get something fairly similar to what we saw in the PDF, where you can see something in the right pop up that you can check the document for. We don't have anything wrong with this document. It's a template, but if we did, there would just be a little alt text indication here of something that needs to be fixed, for example. All right.
And if I may, the checker, the report that the checker generates, it's going to give you both errors and warnings. The report even offers information about how to remediate and why are those measures important for accessibility.
Awesome. And we did see that. We saw here that there was, in the PDF, for example, that there was a caution sign. So that's nice to know that in the reports we can look at those things. Also, if you're wondering, when you create a Word document and follow making that Word document accessible, you're going to be able to export that as a PDF, and it will come out with a lot higher rating in the PDF if you spend time in the Word document making those items accessible. So it does carry over. If you look at Zaire's the digital access website, you'll see that there are some great pages here that you can review. So making a PDF file accessible is one of them. And I noticed that reading through this, there's different ways that you can create a PDF. And there's a note here that, you know, if you save as and select PDF, that's the best way to create a PDF. Sometimes as designers, I got used to, a few years ago, selecting print instead of save as, because when I selected print, I was able to choose some more options as far as like the quality of the PDF and all these different things. However, that is going to create a less accessible file. So it's going to be important to do a save as.
Yeah, it's probably going to produce or export to an image, a flat image that doesn't really, it's not readable by a screen reader.
So that's a good thing to look at. Also, there's a page on checking your document. This is what you would be able to see in Microsoft Word, and it is the PC version for Word. And on Macs, the latest version of Word, Mac 2016, now has the accessibility checker in it. So as I found out, I didn't even realize how fast time passes, right? But I didn't do the most recent update apparently in my Word, and so make sure that if you're running like Mac 2011, that the 2016 version has accessibility component in it, and it's actually really easy to find. It's it's under the Review tab. So similar to on Office 365 under the Review tab that we looked at, it operates like that in your application that you have on your computer if you have the latest version. Also, there's a video that you can watch if you want.
Yeah, so. I went creative, a little bit creative with this, and I wanted to do animation, so I created an animation on how to create an alternate text for an image. Oops.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
I hope that it's not
so there's no sound, but you can see that there's an animation here for how to create alt text. So that's really fun. And that's a fun way to learn about it too. So when you're getting started, it's always nice to have good motivation. As I was preparing for the webinar this morning, ran across a few pages from Microsoft that had accessibility information on them. I didn't even know that they had information, like provided information on this accessibility tool, but it is new to the product, so I'm glad that they do. It looked like this seemed, fairly nice to be able to just show some basics of how to get there and kind of what we talked about today. So if you're looking for additional resources, that could be a place for you to go. All right. That was all that we had for the demo today. However, there was something that I wanted to touch on, and that was when you're thinking about making documents accessible, oftentimes we can get a bit overwhelmed. And I know that some of you who are on the call today have contacted me even and said, we have hundreds of documents all over our website, and I'm hearing that this is the thing, that we need to fix, and what's the best way to go about that? And how do you approach this mountain? You've got the learning how to make a document accessible mountain, and then you have this mountain of files sitting in front of you. So how do you manage that? One thing that a client and I spoke about recently in a meeting was looking at your analytics. So when you look at your website analytics, you're going to be able to see at least which pages are viewed the most and who, who's looking at what on your site. And that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, in the Digital Access website, there's recommendations about how to plan and prioritize your accessibility efforts. It's good for you to document everything that you're doing in case you're confront some sort of a complaint. You have documentation that you're making good effort towards having things be accessible on your website. And make a plan. Don't get overwhelmed. And then there's indications in the literature as to having the top 20% most visited websites be the priority, and then those who fall under that, you can either offer accommodations in the meantime, or if they're legacy websites, the legacy documents that you're not going to be used, frequently, you can just offer accommodations for those. If you're gonna iterate, you're gonna revise, you're gonna refurbish your website soon, like in 3 months or 6 months period, then you plan to revise it in the next iteration. You don't have to get overwhelmed. It's try to address, scale up and prioritize. And there's guidance in the website, like I said, as to how to go about that.
Great. So
I'm not sure if it's guidance, if it's under guidance. Let me see. Legal landscape, creating. Oh, there you go. Creating a digital accessibility plan.
So one thing that I can do is we can put these links and resources on the event page for today's event. So you'll be able to have them available to you as well to look at. And it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also my understanding that what's really most important is having a process. It's really that goal of let's start a process so that if somebody does have a question, like there's a process for that question to get answered and that file to get fixed and that website page to get updated. And so as long as there's a process, that's a great starting point.
Yes,
that's
definitely.
a good place to be.
And if you need information, if you need me to come and sit with you and try to, come up with an outline of a plan, I'm more than willing to come over.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here, and a huge thank you to Zaira for popping in today. We're very excited that you're here with us.
Thanks for having me.
This was great. So if there are any questions, it looks like we have maybe a couple. Maybe we missed them a little bit while we were jumping around. But please feel free to ask questions now if you want to ask them in the chat.
You have to have Acrobat Pro.
You have to have Acrobat Pro in order to do the accessibility checking.
Anything else? Oh, found it.
Great.
I was reading through the question and I didn't.
That's what happened. Yeah. So that's what happens. Says I'm so glad to have developers on the side. We've got Sarah Carney really stepping in the back and helping answer some questions today. She's very excellent with accessibility as well, and does a lot of the front end work for your websites to make them all really pretty and accessible. Okay. Well, if there aren't any additional questions, again, thank you very much for having your coffee break with us this morning or your tea break with us this morning. I know I have mine, and it is just a lifesaver. So I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next month for the next webinar.
Thank you so much.